Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production. And we have part two of our tier list, our World Championship tier list series here. We have brought a different guests here. One half of the Canadian Nationals casting team. We have Lazy Dog and Mr. Frank Hung in the top right, and my co-caster, co-compatriot, co-commentator, I said co-compatriot in the wrong order. Wow, I'm tired. We got Rob up
You
there.
never mess that one up.
Look,
Hello.
I didn't get a ton of sleep, and I'm still absorbing the second level of caffeine here.
And all the
Um,
turkey you probably had over the Thanksgiving weekend.
I didn't have any turkey actually.
Whoa.
I had duck. Does that count? Does that
That
count as a
sounds
Oh, that's
really
almost
fancy.
bird?
turkey.
It's
Yeah,
almost turkey.
it's like a
It's a
BBQ
bird.
duck, like a Peking kind of duck going
Oh
on.
yeah,
Anyways,
Oh,
that's
that's great.
that's better than what I
yeah,
had.
it
Damn.
was very good. Anyway, it's enough about birds. We're here to talk about the CC portion. So as everyone knows, Worlds is coming up very soon, based on the release of this video. It should be like the week or 2 weeks after. And this is going to be a CC list based on kind of our outlook of the meta, playing post ban list, post October ban list, to see what the shakeups are based on battle hardened results, based on our own kind of testing and what we've kind of seen in the field. With that, these are just our opinions based on the data we have available to us. Please do not take them as gospel, even though some of you will and probably flame us in the comments, but that's life. And with that, I think we're gonna start off here. So I guess
Yeah.
we'll start with Azalea yet again because
It's
it's
pretty
based
much
on alphabetical
alphabetically
order.
ordered here, except
Yeah,
for the end we have Prism, and I just couldn't remove her from this tier list, so she's
yeah.
sticking there. But we all know, of course, you can't play her in CC. So
So let's put
Azalea,
Azalea.
A
So
for
Azalea is
Azalea.
interesting. Yeah, Rob just trolling off the bat. But Azalea is interesting because everyone thought she was a meme, and then she top aided one of the nationals with a pretty interesting looking list. A lot of cards that people didn't remember are in the game. Like I think Battering Bolt was in the list, and a couple other things. I actually checked out some of those matchups, and Azalea is actually much better in CC than she is in Blitz, in my opinion, just because she actually has the ability to have good matchups, and that's actually like something that is very reasonable because at higher health, at 40 health, you can actually like attack some of the meta, and you're attacking like you're shutting off a lot of abilities. You're coming in with pretty strong cards. Right in the Ledger, Remorseless, very strong. Sleep Dart. She has a lot of arrows that's still able to turn off the opposing turn. And for decks that don't like to block, quite good. You can use her ability to dominate some big arrows and shut off the opposing turn, or use cards that really hamper the ability to swing tempo. That being said, still a ranger. Still can get fatigued by armor, heavy control. Same kind of idea. Still probably her Achilles heel. And I think because the meta is still going to be leaning towards ice heroes slash some of the aggro heroes, very similar to that respect. I think she can do well with the right strength of schedule, but
Yeah.
I think putting her in B is reasonable. I don't know what you guys think about Azalea, but I think putting her in B is actually, I think, okay.
Yeah.
Question mark?
I'll defer to Frank if he has any points about Azalea.
No, I think that was a really good summary of how she's kind of shifted without Prism in the meta, without the other
Mm,
very powerful aggro decks that kind of blast through her disruption. The one thing I'll say is in a tier list, we're kind of ranking everything in relation to one another. So we might start with her at B, but once we start adding more heroes,
Mhm.
she's kind of
She could be
on
like
my
end
on
of
my
B
chopping
or
block.
end of B
mm.
tier, maybe like being of C, somewhere around there. So
Yeah,
yeah,
because this is in correlation to like the world's meta, and so we have to consider like what are the S tiers
yeah,
and who can attack the
yeah.
S tiers the best, and that will shape A, B, and C generally.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
we could leave her in B. Speaking of
Yeah,
Boltyn, you got a B hero. I
there's a
don't know
B.
if I think I'm shoving him in C for
B for
now.
Bolton. Yeah, yeah.
So I don't play a ton of Boltyn. The Boltyn I have seen is the Saber Boltyn. That's what's been historically the most successful. I don't even think Raiden Boltyn has been played in
Yeah, that's
any
how we
real
started
capacity
out.
in
Then when we
years.
switched to Sabers, it was just so much better with
Yeah.
Lumina and like the OTK style. So
Well, because then you get a win con. Like
yeah,
Boltyn before with Raiden didn't have a win con. His win
yeah.
con was literally like what? Oh my God, Valiant Thrust. It's just
Alvarez
Yeah,
Thrust.
or
Yeah,
very, very like odd. Like I think
yeah.
same issue in Blitz. I think Axis is severely underpowered. I think Spillblood's an interesting card. I think Dynasty might give him some more tools, possibly. I don't know actually, but inherently charging cards is all well and good, but other people's board states are just better, right? Like an ice board state, a control board state. Hell, even Seismic Surge kind of seems a little bit better than charging cards just for like a big
Yeah, the
you know, build
payoff
in
just
the turn.
isn't as good as it should be
It's not there.
on a
And he
deck where
does
you're
get
playing one card per turn, pretty much until you're ready to
yeah.
Lumina.
Yeah, and my issue with Centauri Saber's build on Boltyn is that you get shut down by cards like Hypothermia, you get disheveled by like any disruption, ice,
Right.
or like attack, like a big guardian attack or like a crypt. Like if someone like dominates a crippling, you don't have a D react and you're forced to discard like a Lumina, half your game plan's gone. Like
Yeah.
it's a very precise game plan centered around Luminas and Charging Soul, right? So Charging Soul is fine, but the other pieces can be disrupted, and he runs armor, but his pressure is nil other than that combo. And so for that reason, I don't like him into any of the A/S tier decks at the moment. I don't know
Yeah.
if you guys
I agree.
otherwise about Boltyn.
No, I agree with that. I think the only thing that would make me not put him in meme tier is that if everyone's playing slower and slower decks, that gives the combo
Yeah.
deck a little bit more gas into them. But it's still, unless you're literally one of the players that has been playing just Boltyn for the past 16 months, you're probably not going to get very far in the
It's
World
got to be a
Championship.
pet deck, I think. You got to be a diehard Boltyn fan, which I know a few here in Ottawa, or at least one I know in Ottawa is probably going to play him no matter what.
Yeah.
But yeah.
My issue with Boltyn is like, why don't you just play Dorinthea if you want to play
I
warrior?
was about to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Dorinthea is just much
You get the
better.
armor. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can use Valiant Dynamo better.
We'll wait till Dory later though. But I think for now we'll leave
C
him
seems
in
fair.
C tier. I think he can be in meme tier.
Yeah,
I'm okay with
on the
also
cusp.
putting him in meme tier.
Yeah.
However, I'm gonna shove him in C.
I mean,
for
looking
now.
at the list, he
I
might be one of the few meme tier heroes we have. In CC, the meta is actually pretty diverse, where a lot of these
don't
heroes.
know, I'm looking at you, Levia.
Yeah,
I'm looking at
are you?
other
Yeah.
Oh,
meme
that's
tier
rough.
heroes. Yeah.
We'll talk about her when she comes up later. Okay, Bravo.
Well, yeah, Bravo's a deck near and dear to my heart, obviously. One of the deck techs on the Spark of Genius channel. I've played a lot of Bravo historically.
Yep.
It's tricky because of Oldhim, right? And so when you're looking at a Guardian to play in relation to some of the other decks, especially over the Nats season, there were Bravos that top eighted. There were a chunk. Bravo ended up, I think he won at least one of them. But he also came pretty highly, like New Zealand. Bravo ended first in Swiss before top eight, and Bravos have been doing well on different kind of builds. People have gravitated towards the more mid-range style of builds, so you're running CNC Pummel, you're running like big red attacks like Choke Slam, sometimes Crush the Weak for 5, even though it's not really great anymore, honestly. Your Spinals Crippling, Rouse, Zealous Belting, E-Strike, like you're going faster, right? And so you have better matchups into decks like Dromai. I think you just absolutely trounce Dromai. And you have like a good enough sideboard to like side decently into like a Dory. Your dash matchup isn't horrible. The main issue I have with Bravo is that in the current mid-range state that a lot of people end up playing him, you're not even that favored into aggro, if favored at all. You're honestly 50-50 in all the games I've played. And with that, you just like, you miss a pummel turn or you miss a disruption turn and you lose. Because they just block with armor and they just hit you for 20 or 30 damage, right? It's just a matter of like, Bravo inherently isn't a deck with a card suite that enables consistent damage pressure for like 10 turns in a row.
Right.
And his damage ceiling just isn't that high. He's not a damage-oriented hero. He's a disruption-oriented that's just how it is, right? And he's a very resource-intensive hero. You get those all red hands, you end up doing a whole lot of nothing, right?
Yeah, if you turn off for one turn, he's pretty sunk against
screwed
most
until,
aggro
like,
decks. Yeah.
Into like Viserai, Briar, they're gonna rip you a new one. Like it's not. I've been on the receiving end of that, and it's just like you're boned if you miss a turn. And so that's kind of my main issue. And you're not even that great into Oldhim. I mean, there are some Bravo builds that do well into Oldhim, but you shave off points into other matchups. But like Oldhim just running Tunic Sledge just outvalues Bravo historically in the long run. Again, that's on the more standard mid-rangey Bravo. I think Control Bravo is an interesting pick. Like you block up, you life gain, similar to what Dash would do, as a more fatiguey kind of strat. I think you do well into decks like Oldhim. You do well into aggro. You might shave some points off here and there into something like a Dash. However, I think that might be like a better choice going in. However, that deck is much harder to play. It is a lot more skill intensive. You're playing second, third, fourth cycle. You're playing last ditch. You're playing a lot of cards that people are not like. You need to really practice that game plan. And for that, I don't think it's gonna be as popular because it's just not as fun to swing.
Do we agree better than Azalea?
Better than Azalea.
Oh yeah, I would say so.
You put him at B or A, Frank?
Initially, it was B. A. I kind of flipped him down maybe to the high B tier. I'm okay either way.
I think there's some interesting space for him for sure. I've seen more players play Vandal Spring Tunic in Bravo for those slower matchups, and I wonder if that could be a card that sees play more generally in the game plan instead of leaning into a tectonic plating game plan. But you're losing the 2 armor. You're losing, obviously the ability to make a seismic surge. So it's not necessarily a better or worse kind of thing. But when you're playing for CNC Pummel or when you're playing for against Oldhim, I guess you're playing it for the sledge perhaps. There's just a few factors I think that makes that approach able to be flexible. And I think you touched on this with, you're losing percentage points when you adapt to what one deck is doing. You're losing that in another matchup. But the fact that Bravo can make those changes, I think, is like a point in his favor, which is why I would put him above Azalea. Maybe I don't know. Maybe low A, just because.
Yeah, we can start there. Yeah, I mean, a hero this versatile. Yeah, a hero this versatile probably can't be bad, right? He's probably at least medium here, low, high. So I think low of A for now. A good place to start.
Low of A is fine. The tunic combat is very, very, very real because of Iyslander, right? So Iyslander Steam is being popular. Tunic is much better into Iyslander because you get a source to actually break the frostbites. You don't have Crown of Seeds like Oldhim does, so you actually get a source to be able to break those big turns. It is actually a big boon because you can also use it against Cornet Peak. You can use it against Winter's Bite to actually pay it off and still have your cards. Historically, Bravo is not good into the non-Hamilton Iyslander, not the one running a bunch of attack actions like the regular Iyslander. I'll say into the Hamilton Iyslander, I think Bravo's real good actually, but it's just a matter of the regular one. Bravo, real not good, really not good.
Okay.
So I think we'll give him an A for now.
Let's go on to Briar. Probably at least going to be here.
I'm going to speak a little bit about Briar and then pass it on here. I think Briar's S tier right now. The reason is I think Briar and Fi are the best aggro decks by a big margin, I would say. Briar's ceiling is stupidly high. Final Mount is a stupid card. Briar has a very flexible board where she's able to have armor to block out tempo because she's Runeblade, so her gloves block Battle Ward for 3, and then she has she can run creepers, she can run the Iron Weave, she can run Crown of Providence. She has 5 to 6 armor for a deck that can for the first block for CNC if she needs to, kind of thing. I think she also has a lot of draw potential. She has a lot of ceiling damage turns, so 20-30 damage turns are not that hard to do. And the high rolls are stupidly insane. And the fact that your Rosetta still does mixed damage, question mark. I don't know. That's still a very strong weapon to have on a hero. And Briar uses it easier than Viserai. I think she does use it easier than Viserai, but she just has that consistent damage. So I personally think she's either on the very high end of the A tier. Definitely better than Bravo. As an overall hero, definitely above Bravo. But I can see a world where she's low S tier. I don't know what you guys think about that. That was my small speech.
Yep, I agree. I've played Briar quite a bit in CC. She has few weak matchups, and when you do get Channel Mount early, it's very hard to lose with this deck. All of the on hits are so relevant.
Her brick feels so bad. Her brick feels like all non-attacks, and you just cry yourself a river. It just feels that's why she's not the best of the best right now. She's not insurmountably the best hero you can choose.
And fairly weak to ice, I will say, just because of all the reds you run. There was the Belittle list that was floating around for a bit. That deck was a little better because of all the pitch you do get from getting a blue Midwisdom to hand, right? So that was a lot more flexible into ice. So I think if you run that build, it's a lot better for you. But the traditional, more aggressive list with a bunch of reds, not too great because you can't really play out all your cards. So I agree with low of S, high of A.
I might even like I know we're still establishing some benchmarks here, but I might even say like what is the low of S if there's only a few heroes in S? She's still just. I think she might be a top 3 hero in the meta right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
I think it's reasonable. Top 3,
assuming
top 4,
we might have a top 3 in S. Yeah, okay. I know we're at least going to be holding a spot for Oldhim and Iyslander maybe up here.
Oh, whoa, spoilers.
Well, you've gone way too far, sir.
Yeah. How about top of A for now? Because I know she's not the best hero, and we'll see where she falls after. At the end of our discussion, we can move some stuff around and try to figure out the best possible positioning for all these heroes. Yep. All right, next we got Dash.
Let's move on to the hero that created our channel, right? So
Spark of Genius.
Right. Spark of Genius.
So of course we put her in S tier, right? Bias.
Of course we put in S tier. I mean, both myself and Rob have played a lot of Dash in the past. I think Dash is probably my second or third most after Bravo. So quite a little bit of Dash experience. Not a ton though, but I think the key with Dash here is that you have a couple different builds running around, right? You've got your booster die trying. The build that was very popularized by Mr. Jason Jang, who was interviewed at Spark Genius. If you want to go check that out, no pun intended there. So it came out swinging. Nobody knew what it did. Nobody blocked, and everyone died. So that's kind of what that build did really well. And racing Dash on that build, real difficult because Pounder is 6 damage on board. Like Pounder is just there, and it gives you 6 damage on 3 attacks and in 3 turns, right?
And compounds with the combustible couriers.
Yeah, compounds with Goliath, combustible, boosted for 8 or whatever it is.
Utilizing maximum velocity very well too, right? That deck. First time that card has seen play in a long time, but really effective. Real effective.
It gets around the control decks, right? Because you need to be able to get up and over those multi blocks. So I think when decks with just realize you just block with your 3 blocks, and you just fatigue dash out, not as good. And so the hybrid dash has been more popular lately, where you have like a pretty robust sideboard into those builds. And then of course the top 8 dash builds from the US Nats, Jacob Baugh, I think his last name is Baugh, who kind of did the best Mike Walker cosplay I can think of, and just pretty much took the top 8 Canadian Nationals deck.
Right, there's that list
and
too.
Made some changes. I think he said it was based on that essentially. So that was a deck that just essentially said, "Give me all the Oldhims, bring me to top 8, bring me to top 8 Nirvana based on the dead body of Oldhim," and he did it. He got to top 8. Hey, he versed Fi and got his ass handed to him. But in top 8, he got to top 4 with that strategy, I believe. So it was a very realistic strategy. So overall, I think top of B, bottom of A.
I tend to agree. Because
if
you
we're
can
putting Bravo at A, I think Dash is about the same, though.
Maybe we can put her here.
That seems like a pretty good spot.
I would put her next to Bravo. She's still like a strong
on this right.
I'd play Dash over. I'd play Azalea and Boltyn at this moment. That's kind of the idea.
I think she's still good. She's a good hero in this meta currently. You do lose to Briar and Fi pretty badly, but if you're facing a lot of
Fi is a nightmare. Fi is horrible.
Yeah, but she does pretty well because you have that dual strategy where you can go more aggressive or more control. So in the same deck, you can just sideboard differently for each strategy. So I think that versatility gives her an edge in a lot of matchups. But against the best decks in the format, she's not quite on par.
Yeah, if you want to see a game, just check out the last 5 versus Dash game we have on Spark of Genius and see how the racing works when you go for the Pounder. But even with that, I think Dash is still a reasonable choice because of her flexibility, similar to Bravo.
Perfect.
Dory?
All right, Dory.
All right, I'm going to be the first to say it.
Yep.
A tier. Dory is A tier.
Dory's A tier?
Here we go. Tell me why Dory's A tier. Where on A tier is she at the moment?
Like maybe in that same range as Dash and Bravo.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that she's a lot better than people give her credit for, because not to be downplay how good the players in competitive scenes are and stuff like that, but I think a lot of the good players that have played a lot of Dorinthea have not played her to these big tournaments. But I think that if those players that chose to play, something like Oldhim to those tournaments had been on Dorinthea instead, they would have performed almost as well. And the big difference, I think, is that head-to-head matchup with Oldhim. Like, I think that's really the biggest weakness the deck has right now. But it's like otherwise very good almost everywhere else in the meta.
That's fair. I think.
And to me, it's the opposite of the Dash strategy. It's dodge Oldhim, make top
Yeah. I really dislike Dory's Guardian matchup in general. I think Bravo also smooshes Dorinthea, unless you're on 9 shunts and Prey. And in that case, you might be on time anyways. But I think your Guardian matchup into Dory is like real bad on average, which doesn't make me as like, yeah, you could Prey on aggro. I think the key with Worlds is we have to remember that there's only 5 CC games in Swiss for CC. There's 2 drafts, there's 5 CC games, and there's 5 Blitz games, I believe. Something along those lines. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think it's 2 drafts, 5 CC, 5 Blitz. There's only 5 CC rounds in Swiss, so like until you don't need to do stupendously well on a really large basis of heroes to make top 8 because it's going to be based on your other records also. That being said, I think Dory feeds on aggro real well. I think Dory is real good into the aggro decks. Her dash matchup is question mark. I haven't seen a ton of those matchups going on. I think it's relatively even.
It's
I think
probably
Yeah, I
close.
think I'd agree with that. It's pretty close.
I think it's pretty close to 50-50. Dash might be able to squeak out a little bit of points depending on how Dash is built, and whether going aggro. Or I think she could stonewall if she's running like unmovables and sinks and stuff. So she could do a similar kind of strategy. However, I think Dory's got game into a lot of those heroes. The Iyslander matchup is also a bit of a question mark. It's kind of rough depending on if you're built to withstand Guardians and you're running a whole ton of shunts that don't that question
Yeah,
mark
they can't
do
be
something 'cause you
sided.
don't know. Yeah, they can't be sided in unless you're like banking on them being on the attack action strategy, which is a hell of a risk that you're taking, right? So
Yeah.
I think Dory has some issues that you're taking away a lot of her strength, which is her very big armor suite and her very good defense reactions, into Iyslander, who doesn't really care about either. And I think Icelander's a top tier hero. And so
Right, right.
I definitely think shoving her in A is fine. I think I'd put her below Bruh.
You want to put
Yeah,
her
below
around
Bravo.
here?
I think
Yeah.
where she is okay. I think we
Okay.
might move Dash around, but for now we'll leave the A's and move on to our
Awesome.
legal illusionist.
Okay. Yeah. The only one you can play right now, Dromai.
Yeah, I've put a lot of reps into Dromai recently, just because I really like Dromai. I just wish she was better. But
Yeah.
right now, like hear me out. It's not inherently better. I just wish Fi wasn't a mess because that matchup is just like. Don't get me wrong, Dromai can win, and Dromai can win on very specific builds, and she's very flexible with her reds, right? So she has the Centipies. She can go more aggro with stuff like, Rabble, Snatch, all kinds of like really different levels of strategy as far as aggressiveness, and you can try to race, or you can try to control out sand covers, sinks, fates, what have you, right? Your issue is that your dragons don't have Spectra, and so anybody with an on hit is just going to say thank you for the free card or the free whatever. And it's kind of rough because I think Kodachi Fi and Embermaw, sorry, I'm thinking about
Cinepi?
Emberblade, Emberblade. Searing Everblade. I think Fi is a really difficult matchup for the average or slightly good. So maybe the best of the best have figured out great ways, and maybe just shaving off percentage points into other matchups. I think your Oldhim matchup is actually quite good, and I think now that Oldhim does have Pulse, I think Dromai, a good Dromai who's practiced into it, is slightly favored on average. I would say based on what I've seen.
That's pretty
Your
big.
issue is
Yeah, that's
your
pretty
issue
big.
is getting through the aggro decks. Like your matchup into Briar is kind of questionable. Your matchup into Fi is questionable. And Dory also seems kind of questionable with those free on hits with your Dawnblade. Now that I'm thinking about it, so and your Bravo matchup is horrid. I completely forgot. If you run to mid range Bravo, you might as well bend over. Like it's not it's not a fun matchup. You can win, but you need to get You need everything to go correct. And so I think Dromai is solidly in B tier above Azalea. Don't put her next. Yeah, that's right. Put her on the left. Don't give me that. But her matchup into Iyslander is pretty good. That's why, on average, you're at least 50-50 if you're doing it correctly.
Yeah, it is nice that she does have good matchups into the top 2 ice heroes, at least. So that's something.
I say 50-50 on average, but 50-50 isn't anything terrible, right?
Better than a lot of the other heroes. But yeah, into aggro she suffers a lot. So the Fies and the Briars of the meta are probably gonna smush you.
Yeah, and it's not like your Prism and you can beat randomly like average or bad, aggro decks that just they're attacking into the wrong Spectra, or they're leaving your Spectra auras out, or they're attacking into them when they shouldn't be, and they don't know how to play against it. Dromai is not as hard to play into compared to Prism, so she doesn't have that level of thought that you need to really do. If you could pop their dragons, pop their dragons.
Right.
hit them for free cards, get money, get paid.
Yeah.
I don't know. Any other thoughts about Dromai?
I think that the players that I've seen success on Dromai are just very good players that partially are taking best advantage of what the hero is offering them, but also like it does feel like they were playing a different hero. This is the opposite of what I said with Dorinthea. Is like it seems like they could also be just as successful playing another hero with the same number of reps. And
that makes sense. Yeah.
A separate point to touch on is, whether Oldhim players think that Dromai can be fatigued or not. Like, I don't know for 100% certainty whether it's true, but if the Oldhim does decide to go into that game plan, there is definitely a much higher likelihood of the game going to time in the Swiss, which is like pretty disastrous if that's like you're winning in there, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, on that, I would say that at the World Championships, it's probably less likely. I would hope these players probably know what they're doing at this point, but that being said, Oldhim, like the Dromai player doesn't know whether Oldhim is fatiguing or not until they flip Rampart.
It's gonna be
Once they flip Rampart, and then they're not on. Like it's possible that they're on Rampart and still trying to attack you, right? Because they don't have pulse. It's a little bit it's a little bit more tricky, but definitely agree that it can go both ways, and the sideboard does change. Luckily, all your defense reactions are red anyways on Dromai, so you can still pitch for Ash and use them to pitch for Furnace.
That's fair.
But yeah, gonna move on to Fi. Fi is S tier.
Just plain and simple.
I don't know if you can argue that he's not overall the best aggro deck
of the meta
worlds, because he has the best matchup into Iyslander as far as the aggro decks go, because he can burst through a lot of the frostbite damage. His turns are a lot more consistent than Briar because he doesn't just draw 4 non-attacks and brick, right?
Yep.
And he's able to still push a very high ceiling, as we saw in that other CC game with like an Art of War turn, right? Yep. Mask of the Pouncing Lynx is not banned in CC. It's still very, very reasonable in CC, and so you get a free 5 to 8 damage. Even more if you're just like bonkers, right? Double Art of War turn is a thing. Your aggro matchup into Briar is definitely winnable, and if not a little bit, it really depends because there's Kodachi Fi and Emberblade Fi, right? Strengths and weaknesses for both, but I think both of them have relatively like good matchups in general. I think your matchup into Dory is not ideal. I think Dory is one of those heroes that is pretty good into that because Dory can come back with a lot of stacking pressure with the Dawnblade counters. I think your matchup into Oldhim is actually, and then Oldhim doesn't have pulse anymore too, which does shave off some points on the Oldhim matchup, right? But I think Oldhim, I think the best 5 players will have good shots into Oldhim. I think average to weaker 5 players are still going to get bullied out by Oldhim. But again, I'm thinking World Championships, so I'm thinking
that's
right. Well, that's for World Championship anyway, so
I'm thinking the best of the best.
Yeah.
People bringing Fi, I'm sure, are practicing to Oldhim. And I say Fi can get slightly 50-50, usually slightly favored also from the matchups that I've also seen. Good results at Battle Hardened. Ended up winning Battle Hardened Dallas, I believe. Like relatively good results from the US Nats and overall. The only thing I'm a little bit curious about is that his international record is actually quite poor as far as conversion rates go. I think he's really just been doing well in the US. And like I think Drew did top 8 with Fi.
Yeah.
To be fair, it wasn't just, but I can just say North America at that point, right? I think internationally, a lot of the Europeans who are coming over, which are going to make up a big portion of Worlds, and as far as the Asian countries too, not nearly as many Fis. A lot of Briars, Iyslander, Oldhim. So I am a little bit curious to see how they're going to be working with that. But what do you guys think about Fi?
Oh, Frankie might be muted.
You're a little on the muted side.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, he did win in the UK as well. So
he did win in the UK.
Right.
I'm just gonna say the English-speaking countries.
Yeah, exactly. I think I agree with a lot of what you said, and I think that it's interesting because we talk about how proactive the aggro decks are and how presenting your own strategy is the best way to win a lot of games of Flesh and Blood. But I is actually able to like still do that game plan, but as we've seen across a few series of tournaments and through that ban of Stubby Hammers, like you're bringing in a lot of cards that are specifically doing different functions in different matchups, and you're able to fit that while doing the primary game plan of I'm going to kill you faster than you can kill me. So I think like the best aggro players will be able to see or predict how the players playing these other heroes are planning on attacking the matchup, and just being able to kind of next level that plan like really, really well. So I think like Fi definitely is the best aggro deck, I think.
Perfect. Okay, S tier it is, I guess.
Yes.
Let's move on
Let's move Iyslander
Elsa.
right next to Fi there. Iyslander is interesting. So, historically speaking, the deck before US Nats, I guess, was very, I would say, two-dimensional. She had two main strategies. Into control, she would set up Frost Hexes, Ice Eternals, and go off that way. And into aggro, she'd be more tempo-focused and use Striders to be able to
close out a game.
either steal away tempo with an Ice Vein turn or something like that, or finish the game, period, right? That being said, she has some of the strongest disruption tools in the game because she's ice, right? She has Hypothermia, she gets Channel Lake. Coronet Peak is a very strong card, like a one card disruption and an Arsenal of blue kind of thing. She's able to consistently put out disruption turn after turn with a blue ice card from Arsenal, which even Oldhim can't do that. Oldhim would need to pitch an ice blue for a D-React to do an equivalent kind of take a card from their hand. That being said, there's also the fact that she does start at 36, right? She does have this newfangled attack action build, which I think Michael Hamilton is an innovator, and I don't think anyone could argue this. Like he's one of the best innovators, from seemingly simple ideas like, hey, this card's good in draft, let's use it in CC, and he's able to really capitalize on those kinds of strategies. I think that build will be less represented at Worlds. I'm not 100% sure. I think the build will be less represented in Worlds in that capacity because people will have known about it and practiced into it.
Yeah.
The thing is that the core idea of that is that two cards, your 2-card hands, a blue and a 3-for-8 or a 3-for-7, are still better than a lot of your old school like Iyslander pitch for an Ice Bolt for 5,
right.
or for Aether Hail for 4, and Moon for 2, whatever. Like you're doing slightly more damage, you're more efficient, slightly better in the mirror and other matchups. However, that build shaves points off different matchups depending on what your main strategy is. So I think Iyslander also has one of the highest skill ceilings, similar to Kano, I guess. The fact that they're both wizards probably makes sense, to play it super efficiently every single turn. She has a lot of decision making, in my opinion. So that is like one of those conditions that I think is going to matter quite a bit. Those little efficiencies, turn by turn, will add up
value over time
to make or break a 50-50 matchup, right? Like that will be what it is. It'll be a lot based on the Icelander's own play. But still a very strong hero. Good matchups overall.
Yeah, excellent hero. Probably only suffers a little bit, probably into Fi, a little bit into, I guess, Rhinar. But besides that, not really. So, I mean, she's by far one of the most represented decks besides Oldhim, I think. Just even in our Canadian Nats, we saw her, I think, 2 in top 8, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, she's seeing results across the board. I think it's pretty much an obvious choice to put her in S.
Yeah, and I think, as other decks try to attack Oldhim, they have this balance of certain cards just not being very good or not relevant at all if you're playing defense reactions, or just cards that don't interact well with the instant speed taxes. Like playing extra blues is fine and all, but if you're having a less impactful turn as well, then you're not necessarily going to be able to push through that damage fast enough to kill her. So I think that I agree that she's quite good, and this two directions that other decks are pulled in makes it hard for her to be fully counteracted without those decks just not being relevant into the rest of the metagame.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You have to sacrifice a lot to fine-tune your deck specifically to be against Iyslander, or to do well with Iyslander, so she has that advantage over.
Yeah, and she has those two builds too. Like she has two very valid builds, and you never really know which one's going.
It makes
right?
it easier to put D-Reacts in your deck now, but it just means if you're against the other build, then you're probably not going to do as well.
Card, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you might run some armor, like AB2 and armor instead of AB3 or something like that, right?
All right, let's move on to Kano.
Kano?
Okay, Kano.
Kano.
So, still has Striders.
Oh boy,
he can still use Striders.
Yeah, I can use Striders, but I don't know why. I don't know what he's good into at the moment. Like, I don't know why you're not just playing Iyslander if you want to play Wizard.
Yeah. The thing is, in the past, right, when Iyslander wasn't part of the meta, heroes who, when you're looking to sideboard and create your decks, right, you probably didn't care too much to sideboard in the AB3, AB, because if you ran into a Kano, it's like, okay, fine, I'll give up that match. But they were so far and few between that you were able to do that and just play the system where if you don't, you might not run into the Kanos and you'll do fine. If you run into one, fine, I'll take my loss. But now with Iyslander in the meta, everyone's stacked with AB3, so Kano just lost that kind of the surprise factor and that auto win factor that he had in the past. And also, a lot of the control decks are running the the Oasis Respite. That just kind of completely lowers the power of your wildfires. So I think that was his main win condition, and with those cards or cards that are similar to that in the meta to deplete damage like that, I think it's pretty rough on Kano.
Yeah, I think Oasis being more in the meta than it was before, definitely, and as well as players bringing at least 2 AB at this point for Iyslander, if not 3, is going to really hamper a lot of Kano's free wins, quote unquote, right? That being said, the amount of ice heroes just bodes real poorly for Kano. Historically, it's not like very tuned to the point where you need every resource for a lot of these big turns, right? You can't, like, Frostbites really screw you. Cards that like make you call, like Channel Lake, stuff like that, like really, really hurt quite a bit. That being said, I think he's still strong. I think B is fine. Like I think he's better than Boltyn just because people don't know how to play against Kano very well.
Yeah, he still has that surprise factor. Yeah.
Just because you have AB, it doesn't mean you're going to beat Kano. The players that are bringing Kano to World CC probably know what they're doing. I would hazard to say they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they're bringing it for a very specific reason. Probably to trounce aggro, I imagine. I don't think Kano ever has like an amazing matchup into their decks unless he just stacks like a monster and then prays they don't have Oasis or an ice. Yeah. I think I would take Dromai before I take Kano. So I think Dromai is probably Kano in that aspect. I don't know if I'm going to take Kano in front of Azalea, to be honest. They're probably about the same for me.
Yeah.
I would almost say, like, Kano is one of those decks where he's either in meme tier, like, performance-wise, or he's, like, just the greatest pocket pick in the metagame, like he was at the first Pro Tour, right?
Yeah, New Jersey.
Like, it's so polarizing that it's hard to place him on a tier list without saying with certainty that we know or don't know how much AB people are going to bring, or even, like, what heroes we think are going to be in the top cut, because it doesn't mean anything if you squeak into the top cut on like a 3-2 CC record, and then literally any of the other 7 players have a deck that just auto wins against you. Would be like a pretty bad spot to be in. Yeah. I kind of am inclined to bump him down.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too. I think because of the AB situation here, I think he's probably going to be a bit lower on the food chain. See your meme? Is he our first meme hero?
I'm putting him above Boltyn here. I'm sorry. I'm not like that hero still does disgusting things. Like, you can't count him out as much as people want to, and they really do.
And maybe it's one of those things, like the morning of, everyone will wake up and make that decision about their Arcane Barrier, and the Kanos that have been practicing that game plan are just gonna sneak through the cracks and make it into the top cut, right? And that's the thing, is like, I think I'm saying 90% chance that he's in C tier, and then the 10% chance that he's good, he's going to be in S tier. He's going to be like
that's true. That's true. It's hard. It's hard to argue for like an A or B, I guess, because he's never going to be in that middle spot where everyone knows about him and he still does well, right?
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
So we're moving on to the other ninja.
Okay.
He is now the other ninja.
Yeah.
Katsu,
the less popular little brother.
Katsu suffers for being worse than Fi in almost every way. He got a little bit of support. He got double strike, take the tempo, and Shuko. Those are the cards he got at Uprising, right? Shuko, good card. Not really for Katsu. That's just not really a Katsu card. It doesn't. He doesn't have a lot of attacks that are 2 or below. He doesn't want to play them if he does have them, because a lot of them don't have free go again. Like all of Phi's cards that are 2 and below, most of them have go again, or they're like
or they're
burst,
blue, and you want to pitch them away, probably.
Exactly. So he gets the 2 armor, but it's not that much more than the 1 armor, and then the +1 attack reactions from the from his regular gloves.
Yeah, and his combo lines are pretty hard to get off if the opponent knows what to block.
Yeah,
you can play around him pretty well.
Yeah, again, playing against Katsu is something that is an acquired skill.
Right.
I think
it's not like against Dory, where you got to know what to block. Here, it's a similar situation.
I've seen plenty of good players miss blocking to Katsu. It's just a thing that just always happens. I think he's still a reasonable hero as far as damage output. I think he can put out a lot of damage. I think his consistency is much lower than Phi. You don't have a lot of reasons to bring this hero over Phi is the real issue here. And for that reason,
meme.
I don't think he's a meme.
There is an OTK Katsu build, which I think that would be in the meme category.
That's a good point.
I'm talking about like
your regular Katsus. Yeah. But then, like, I guess to Frank's point, is there even a reason to have a regular Katsu in this meta and not try the meme strategy of OTK?
if it's your pet deck, you're going to bring regular Katsu and just prey on the people who don't know how to play against Katsu and are just worse players. Or if you win the aggro roll and sack your way into a victory, or... I'm sure there are strategies. I know there are good Katsu players out there that really like Katsu. I think he's a C-tier hero overall in the world's meta.
There's probably more of a reason to play Boltyn than Katsu at this point.
Yeah, sure. I don't know.
I'll give you that one, Rob. I'll give you that one.
Okay. Let's put him here. Sure. Cusp of meme tier, but like we said, there's the OTK build that might be a thing. All right. Let's move on to Levia. Or Levia.
Don't put her in B. No. You're putting her in the meme tier. There is no reason to bring this hero into Worlds. And let me tell you why. These ice heroes just absolutely dunk on your entire strategy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know how if Levia can play against
You can't run Blood Debt, I think, into any ice hero, because once you start that train and you get disrupted once, you just die.
Like, one of your best cards is this cult card, Carrion Husk, and you can't even run it into Iyslander if they're not on... Like, what if they're not on attack? Like, they're going to see Levia and be like, oh, I don't need to run attack actions, because, like, if she runs Husk, she loses, pretty much. It's like not a chess slot.
You can't discard, you can't block, so you can't fill your graveyard, so the only build you would probably run would be the non-Blood Debt variant of the deck.
What I think is just too weak. I think it's just too slow.
Because you might as well run Rhinar at that point.
There are decks that go at that speed that do better than you.
Yeah.
And your explosive turns are just like, okay, so you need to get cards in the grave. Fantastic, right? So at that point, you're just... Levia's always been kind of bad at aggro. Like, I think Viserai, Briar, they just kind of shit on her. Like, it's just too much to handle. That being said, Levia has a bunch of no blocks. Really not great for this particular reason. And if you disrupt her a little bit and wreck her blood debt train,
crumbles,
loses. So
I agree.
Unless you absolutely love Levia, like it takes a certain level of hero that even Mansan doesn't want to play her into like regular events now, right? Like even he's admitted that it's just too difficult.
Too miserable into Iyslander.
It's too hard to play this deck consistently, because this deck is the furthest thing from consistent. Like it's just not, right? So I think she's in the meme tier, as much as I hate to admit it.
As much as we want her to work out, she's like the underdog of the set. Right now, she's not looking too good. Yeah.
I've got a statistic for you guys. Okay. So, in Talishar on or Flesh and Blood Online Talishar, you can get some pretty inflated win rates of decks that you play. Just like quality of competition is pretty good, but not necessarily like tournament level, right? So I'll give you a comparison here. Viserai, here we haven't rated yet, but like a decent mid-level hero aggro deck in the metagame. I've got a 75% win rate, which is probably higher than it should be, but
Okay.
You know, like I was doing okay with Viserai on Talishar.
Okay.
Similar number of games played on Levia. We were experimenting, trying out a few things. Win rate is 40%.
Oh my god.
I would maybe have put her in the bottom of C, but also meme tier, definitely like you know, if you're playing anything with Blood Dead in it, if you're playing anything with the very inconsistent cards in it, it's like not gonna get very far.
Yeah.
And I think like I do think there's a build of her that is better, that is like quite optimized and can like do fairly well. So maybe not completely but that's always raises the question is why would you play her over someone else?
Yeah, exactly. I think if you're alluding to a build that is not Blood Debt, I'm not sure if that's the case here. Then,
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any taste of what would go in that deck? Like, what kind of cards you'd put in there?
I think what I discovered overall in this metagame, like just any deck, is that you have to be good at blocking, and the decks that are really bad at blocking can get by if they're also the best proactive decks and just like hit that coin flip, or maybe not even a coin flip, right? Like if they hit their odds every single time, then that's how they get by not having to block. And decks that don't have that ability, like Levia or arguably Boltyn and Katsu, it's like if you are not able to push through above what your opponent's doing like consistently, but then you're also bad at blocking, it's just like not a good spot to be. Which is why I think like the decks that play too many non-blocking cards right now are not very good. Which is why those builds of Rhinar and Levia have kind of fallen out of favor. You have to play the blocking cards.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay, so I guess we can leave her in meme tier for now. It's probably going to be one of our few meme heroes. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Next, we've got Lexi. So compared to Azalea, probably better than Azalea.
Yeah. I think she's better than Azalea. There was a top 8 Lexi build in Battle Hardened in Dallas, I believe. There was a top 8 Lexi, very similar to Yuki's list from PT Jersey. No Arbors. I think there were some other changes here or there. Very similar list on average. I don't even know. Sitting next to Dromai, I think B is fine. I think she still has the similar issue into Guardians. She just gets fatigued out, disruption. She's very frail. She just doesn't have a lot of armor. I think a well-timed, CNC or like an Okanold or a Crippling, like her Guardian matchup just isn't that good.
Yeah.
And well, she does have a good amount of disruption to target aggro decks, such as Briar, possibly Fi. I think Fi might be too fast for her, but Briar, Viserai, those kinds of decks. I think her Iyslander matchup is kind of bad. Like you don't if you get hypoed on your turn and your arrows just don't have go again, you just sling an arrow and pass. It feels kind of bad, and she's very like the consistency is on the same level as Briar, where your brick hands are real brick, like 3 of a kind, 3 no arrows. You just your turn's over. Like you just can't.
It's
really
too punishing in this meta, I think, to whiff that hard.
I think if your whiffs are that bad, you're gonna have real consistency issues, and you only have 5 games at Worlds. Dropping a game for consistency could just knock you out of top 8 contention. So you want to have like the best consistent chance of winning overall. Not necessarily trying to spike all your best matchups, unless they're all S tier. But I think your matchup in Iyslander isn't great. I think your matchup into Oldhim isn't great, or Guardian. I think her matchup into aggro is okay. So strength of schedule, maybe. I don't know. I think your matchup into Dromai isn't great either. Honestly, I mean, it sounds like Endless Arrow is great, but me and Rob tried that out, and D-reacts are a thing. Blocking cards are a thing. Dromai has some armor too, so. It's a matter of just like your matchups overall. I think she's like a relatively strong hero. I think for the World's meta, it ain't it. There's too much disruption and non-aggro decks at the top of the food chain that just really shit on your ceiling as far as damage potential.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think like the secret of the previous meta was actually that even though Prism was a rough matchup, she was gatekeeping all the really, really bad matchups. And now you just have to play one every other round instead of every 3 or 4 rounds. Yeah. So I think that's enough to bump Lexi out for me.
Yeah. It's not her time. Not her.
I think B is fine.
Cool. Above Dromai, above Azalea, for sure.
I think next to Dromai, above Azalea is probably where.
Yeah. So you'd probably prefer to play Dromai over.
I would prefer to build
Lexi.
Dromai, even though I think Lexi has. I think she has more favorable matchups, but I think Dromai's unfavorable matchups are not as numerous as Lexi at the moment. But I think it's real close.
Let's keep her there for now, then. All right, the big boy.
All right.
Big boy.
The old man is still S tier.
Yeah.
I think he's still at the top of S
Hasn't
tier.
changed.
I think Pulse made him. Like, I think Pulse lowered the gap between him being way up here and everyone down
he's
here.
still top of the food chain. He's maybe less consistent with his fusing, probably with his hero ability, getting both effects off at once. But that happens like once or twice a game, typically.
Yeah, like pre-Pulse ban, he was half of like most nationals, if not more than half of every top 8 was Oldhim on very similar builds. Even in the past, the Battle Hardened in I think Minnesota, I think Michael Fang brought that out. He won on Oldhim pretty convincingly. He was just smashing aggro decks left and right.
Yeah.
He almost went. I think he top 8'd the Dallas one. I think Dory actually beat him through via the power of Steelblade Shunt. But in general, I think Oldhim is still extremely well positioned. Also, there weren't that many Oldhims that showed up to Dallas, which is interesting. But that's just kind of what it was. They might be saving it for Worlds. They might be saving their tech for Worlds.
Secret tech,
totally possible. Yeah, I think Pulse just brought him a little bit down to earth. I think he's still definitely the best deck. I think he can still win any matchup. Like, I think his most unfavorable matchups are still not that bad. I think his Dromai matchup isn't amazing, but he can still 50-50 it. I think his Iyslander matchup is also pretty 50-50 on average compared to, like, you don't know which Icelander's showing up. Whereas I think the attack action Iyslander is worse into Oldhim, but the regular one is better into Oldhim. So, like, on average, I think your matchup into Fi is good. Like, you don't really need to fatigue out. Like, I don't think you really can fatigue out Fi, but Oldhim can still smack you real hard with real big things.
Yeah.
And that Ice React can really shut down Fi's turn. Very like well-timed Ice React, well-timed Blizzard.
Yeah.
Oh, Blizzard is a hell of a card. And some of those like, Oldhim just is the jack of all trades. He still is the jack of all trades, being an elemental guardian, right?
Yeah.
That being said, losing Pulse, not great. I think he's still like, he's also not difficult to play. Like,
yeah, for a more reactive deck, it's like pretty on rails.
Like, I had little time to practice for Nats. Just like, all right, I guess I'll play Oldhim. Played like 5 or 6 games, brought him to Nats, did fine. Like, I could have gone, like, he didn't seem that difficult to play. Really not.
All your Bravo experience coming into your Oldhim.
But even so, like, I was talking around to people that were playing Oldhim. A lot of them were just like, yeah, I didn't know what to play. Picked up Oldhim, doing okay. Like, 50-50, maybe slightly above. Like, that's real reasonable. And then at Worlds, you're going to have players who are, like, main Oldhim. And, like, that's scary because they're going to pitch stack 100% of the time very well. They're going to know what's there all the time, right?
Yeah.
So I would say Oldhim is definitely like the favorite.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's going to win. I'm going to say they're definitely going to be showing up in top 8. I would be very, very, very surprised. They would have had to tank Blitz and Draft. Like, unless those players just dropped the ball in those other formats, I'm expecting to see some top 8, if not win the whole thing.
Yeah, good thing a hero they have familiarity with isn't also the top of the Blitz metagame, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, that would be real bad. Question mark.
I have something to add about what you were saying about Oldhim there and the Pulse ban is, I think that overall it's more like a experience of the opponent's kind of change in gameplay rather than power level. But the discrete change I think that it makes is it means that you can't keep a effective 3-card pivot hand into the 2 aggro decks now. So it actually makes Briar and Fi better, I think, into Oldhim. And maybe not in a way that, like, flips the matchup percentages like that significantly. But gaining those percentage points is going to be huge for, players that have been playing against him and, like, developing a game plan basically over the past little while. And I think, like, that's one of my arguments for, saying, like, I think Briar deserves to be up there in S tier with the other heroes. Is like, yeah, exactly. I don't know. We're getting ahead of ourselves maybe because maybe we'll revisit once we get through the
we
chunk.
can take a look again. Yeah, but that's a good point because now if you do want to pivot off of a nice Old turn fused, you have to keep 4 cards now in your hand, right?
You have to take 3 to 4 damage. Like, you're going to have to let it attack through.
Exactly.
That's the main difference.
And there could be an on-hit that you don't want to, a nice
Yep, and you're gonna have to use
Snatch
armor. You're gonna
or
have to do
something.
something to block it. Yep, or you just take it depending on when you are in the game,
Yeah.
right? So it is
Yeah, it
fair.
could be like-
He has definitely lost points.
All right, let's move on to the brute boy Rhinar. Okay, so this guy is he's climbing up there, and he's moving up in the world, I think.
Yeah, he is. You know, Rhinar's interesting because the only actual real success he had in Nats was in Canada, obviously,
Malaysia, I believe.
and Malaysia, and that's it. Like that's actually just it. And the reason is because your aggro matchup sucks.
Yeah.
Like I don't think anyone has ever argued, any Rhinar players ever argued that like, I want to see Fi, or I want to see Briar,
No,
I want to see
never.
Viserai.
He's never been
No,
good
no,
into
no.
aggro because your
He hasn't.
intimidate doesn't even matter anymore because they're not
And
blocking.
I think you have three very reasonable aggro decks in the field in Viserai, Briar, and Fi that
Yeah.
you're going to see in 5 games. You're probably seeing at least one, if not 2 to 3, depending on like how things shake up.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you're seeing a bunch of Oldhims and Icelanders, stuff like that, yeah, you've got a better shot.
Yeah.
However, I think there are also different Rhinar builds floating around, like Clay's that Ian and Clay both took to top 8. Obviously, it was very like it only ran claws. It was very focused on like good like solid, efficient 2-card hands, chipping through damage, and then winning off like Blood Rush because that was your above curve card. Like that was what broke the game, right? And it was very rudimentary play that was very calculated. It was a smart play, right? However, we're looking at this in the lens of classic constructed. So you have to play 5 classic constructed games against some of the best players in the world. So in that lens, Rhinar, to me, he still feels a little bit lacking. I think his card pool is not as fleshed out. I think he didn't get nearly as many tools as the other classes did in like Everfest, for example.
Yeah.
I think he got swing big, and that's it. He got swing big, and that's it.
Good
Like,
card, but that was it.
He got blue high roller and swing big. Like those are the cards that people actually play out of Everfest for Rhinar, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
All the other classes in that top kind of echelon got real good tools. Obviously, obviously not Fi, but you kind of know what I'm saying. Like Guardian got a whole lot of better Guardian cards that are really good replacements. Dash got some nifty tools. They got like T-Bone and stuff like that. There were definitely some other cards. So I think like Rhinor's overall power level hasn't shifted that much, but he does have good matchups into control decks, fatigue decks, things like that. Which
there are a few up there. Probably good into Dash, into Oldhim and Iyslander.
It's good into Dash because you can definitely you can fatigue Dash if they're boosting because a lot of your cards block for 3, right? And you're good into like fatigue Oldhim for sure, or fatigue Bravo if Bravo is fatigue.
Right.
Your matchup into Iyslander is reasonable, although Iyslander does have game. Like Iyslander does have cards that definitely just channel and hypo, just stop your turn.
It's not a free win by any means.
Not a free win, but Rhinar is one of the heroes that are better into Iyslander. But I think those other decks like Dory, Fi, Briar, even Lexi for that matter, I think Lexi can tear Rhinar a new one.
Yeah. He does poop on
kind of
Dromai.
gives me pause.
He can definitely wreck Dromai.
He's good into Dromai, but so that kind of gives me pause into like where to put him as far as like, is he top of B? Is he bottom of A? Is he top of A? I don't think I'm putting him in top of A. I don't think he's better than
I wouldn't
Briar.
play him over Briar. Yeah.
No.
Top of B kind of makes sense to me. I'd play him over these 3 heroes here.
That's reasonable.
Maybe over Dory, but Dory has her own niche cases where she's really good. So
I like Dory more than I like Rhinar.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
What do you think, Frank? What do you think? Top of B, bottom of A? How do you like the guy?
I think that's a pretty good spot for him. And I think like if you watch back the Canadian Nats finals, like what obviously there were a lot of things that had to line up well for the opponent there. But what he actually lost to in the end was being, was having the opponent play more efficient turn cycles over, like a long period of the game. And that's basically like sums up the issue with Rhinar not getting this extra support, is that he has too few hands that are able to be hyper efficient.
Yep.
And so like it just lines up poorly into, even if you think about Iyslander, like lining up poorly into your opponent playing
Hypothermia.
2-card hand for
Yeah,
8
their game
value.
plan. Yeah.
And then also just doing better stuff than you other turns a lot of the time. Right?
Yeah, you play 2 fair until you don't. But by that time, it might be too late.
It's Blood Rush. Like, you win off Blood Rush. That's what you have to do.
Yeah.
But
your defensive capabilities before then are not even that great. You have 3 blocks, but you don't have, like, really good tools, I think, to consistently, I guess, prevent your opponent from taking advantage of you, right, in those positions.
Yep.
So.
And Rhinar still has the ability to like screw itself off a bad scabs roll, off a bad like intimidate, not a bad intimidate, off like a bad discard, off a bad beast within, as Rob knows very intently.
Took like 6 damage off that beast.
Yeah, like Rhinar still can hurt himself.
Yeah, so consistency lower on, but I think that's just brute in a nutshell. You're gonna lose consistency.
Let's keep him at B.
I'm fine with that.
I'm pretty happy with
Viserai.
Our last hero of the tier list. Yeah, goodbye Prism meme. All right.
Goodbye Prism.
So,
Viserai to me is at the top of B, and the reason he's at the top of B is that he just has fallen off as a less consistent, lower ceiling version of Briar and Fi. So, like, Viserai can have really bad 4-card hands like Briar. Like, Viserai can brick just as much as Briar can. How often does that happen? It depends on the list. His ceilings are still strong. However, he doesn't have, like, the channel mount break the game turns. He has, Revel, like, Mordred Revel turns. He has the ability to, like, go ham. Like, banning Skelda took a lot out of him, right? It took away his brokenness by,
I was gonna say,
at least a peg, at least a good solid peg. Otherwise, he'd be an S tier right now, right? But he still has good damage potential. I think his turns, as far as consistently doing a good amount of damage, is Moth, Drill, Rosetta. That's the bread and butter. Yeah. And the issue with that is there are counters to that. Like, Ice Heroes can do good. Oldhim has a good matchup into Viserai. Usually, it's favored, but not. You could still win as Viserai. But you have to rely on, like, the most inconsistent, like Tome of the Arcanine and stuff like that.
As we've seen in Nats.
Yeah, but as I saw in Nats, very easily. It happens. Like, it does happen.
Yeah.
I think
3 times in one game.
3 times in one game.
I've only seen that once.
Yeah.
And Iyslander has pretty good game into Viserai, like able to stop a lot of the scaling potential. I think Fi is quite good into Viserai. Yeah. Like Fi is just faster, more consistent.
The other aggro decks probably can race him.
Yep, I think if you want to play aggro, and unless Viserai is your pet deck, I think Briar and Fire are just better. They're faster. Briar is about the same consistency, but the ceiling is higher, and Fi is more consistent. You still have game into a lot of those matchups, but it's just like there's really not as much. I like it better than any of the other B heroes and the C heroes for that matter. Mm-hmm. I just don't know where I would play him over any of the A or S heroes.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, and slight bias because of my personal experience with the heroes, but like I think I would rather play Lexi over Viserai, but I actually kind of agree that she's less powerful than the other heroes that we've put ahead of her. And at that point, it's like, why do I want to play Viserai at all? Like,
yeah, he doesn't have OTK potential anymore, so he doesn't bring anything to the table that the other heroes don't. Maybe the Modern Skies thing makes you have to block the Shrills because you get extra rune chance. That's one thing. And it's also like a very tall attack. But Briar also has that in her channel mounts, right? So you don't really gain much from the Shrill. And then Fi is just really consistent, really good damage. Definitely more damage than Viserai can do. I think just on average or most of the time, you can just pump out more damage. So there's really no point, I think.
He's also just less flexible as far as like the ability to build a more hybrid list to handle more matchups. Pretty much everyone in A or S is able to build differently to the point where it's more effective into different percentage points into different matchups. There's some one-offs. Obviously, Lexi can go lightning or ice, and it's not entirely for everybody. But Viserai has he can't OTK anymore. He's on the damage train, and Fi is also just on the damage train. He just does it better. Same thing with Briar, and then decks like Bravo, Dash, Dory, Iyslander, Oldhim can build differently. Like they can shift their deck depending on what they want to be doing, whereas Viserai, he doesn't have that ability to do that without shaving off points into the matchups he actually needs them in, which is kind of my main issue with Viserai at the moment. Doesn't mean he's not a fun deck to play, though.
So let's take a look at what we have currently in the standings, and we can see if we can move some stuff around. We can go top to bottom, maybe. So from the S tier heroes, I think we can all agree that these three are the cream of the crop in the current tier list.
I'm willing to put Briar up there.
So we have four heroes that are.
I'll come over to the Frank's side here.
Yes.
I'll put Briar up there.
Team Briar.
That's fine. So 4 heroes that we think are going to be probably really well represented at Worlds, and they have the best chance in this current meta. We have
I think those heroes will take up like 3/4 of the top 8.
Yeah.
Assuming ignoring Blitz and Draft.
Right. So
I think as far as CC records, I think those will be the best heroes.
Perfect. So we have some heroes down here in A, which are more of the, I guess they're more fringe picks, but they're still very good, and they have favorable matchups into some of the S tier heroes.
And they have some historic results. Like all 3 of these
Right,
heroes
have
have
results to back them.
historically either top 8'd or won or something. Like they have some data to back them up as far as like conjectured internal playtesting and stuff like that, right? They actually do have results.
Do we feel like any of the B heroes can join them in the A tier, or are these kind of the only 3 A heroes we have? We've got maybe Rhinar or Viserai at the top here.
From like a results point of view, Rhinar didn't even do that badly, and neither did Dromai for that matter, I guess, or Lexi. But like then you're kind of cherry picking here and there, right? Like I think
Viserai won Spanish Nats, and there's some pretty good players in Spain.
But that was the only one, I think.
Yeah.
If I'm recalling correctly, right? But then for that matter, it's like, is he that much worse than Bravo? I don't know. I think
would we
more
play him
Dory?
over Dory? Maybe I was thinking maybe more Viserai representation over a Dory in this current meta.
I think Dory's a better pick as far as like a targeted pick, where like you have a very good plan into aggro, and then you can kind of side into Guardian, as we did see. Like you can win that matchup.
Okay.
I think I'm fine keeping Viserai at B.
Top of B.
If any,
all right.
Yeah, if anything, I would put Dory higher than Bravo.
Okay.
Because the reasons to play her are more concrete than the reasons to play Bravo over Oldhim.
Yeah, that's true. She's a unique hero in this point. She's the best warrior currently in the meta. Yeah.
Bravo can do things very specific. Like you have a lot of, like you have better matchups into decks like Dromai, and you have different builds that are good and available to you as far as like going a more control-y build and pitch stack versus like a mid-range aggro. Like they're both builds you can play. However, I think Dory is a more easy to defend strategy, and it's like I do it into aggro, I have chances into Guardian.
Yeah,
that's not bad in 5 games, right?
All right, perfect.
I don't think any of the B heroes.
One thing I'll point out is just Azalea being higher than she usually is on these tier lists, so better than Katsu, Boltyn, and Kano. So how about over Kano? How do we feel in relation to Kano in this tier list?
Azalea has a result and Kano doesn't.
Kano doesn't? Fair enough.
That's a lie. I think Kano has top 8'd. I think he got top 8 in New Zealand, if I recall.
But he hasn't won a Nationals this year.
Yeah, but neither is Azalea.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, neither of them. They're both top 8'd, and they're both of the few heroes that have not won a Nationals. Yeah. You
could put Azalea on top of Kano if you want.
Oh, you want to move her down? I was gonna say I'm gonna push back on you moving Kano up a tier.
you wanna move Kano to B?
No, he doesn't want that. Right?
No, I don't want.
No, he did not want
that. Let's just leave Azalea and Kano.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, hot take. We'll see if people agree with this. She has bottom of B, so this is like by no means saying she's like a mid tier hero, right? She's like on the cusp of going to like low tier.
C are like here and here.
Yeah,
I think the difference is minuscule.
All right.
And you know we should.
That'd the only meme.
Right, I was gonna say what we could consider doing in the future if you do this on instead of doing it on the tier maker website, you could do it on a big Microsoft Paint thing, and then have the heroes
arrows and stuff.
Yeah, or even just put them further distance apart to see how much better one is than the other.
Oh yeah, to see the actual level difference. Yeah.
Because actually, then we would see that Oldhim is leagues above everybody else.
Yeah, still, yeah.
Not anymore. I think he's better. I don't think he's without Pulse. I think he's not leagues above. But
okay. Can't do gross things.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Well,
there you have it.
Everyone, if you like this content, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know in the comments whether you agree, disagree, have any different takes, something to note. And with that, Appreciate everyone for watching. From wherever you're watching in the world, have a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Bye for now.